Hi, this is Jeremy Flicker, and I'm going to demonstrate some of the new DB2 integration features that we've added to IDZ 16.0, as well as some upcoming features for future releases. Um, so what we've done for 16.0 is we've added DB2 integration using the remote systems view as our primary user interface. Under your remote zOS connections, you'll see a new subsystem for DB2 for zOS connections, from which you can manage connections to Db2 databases, as well as to SQL Tuning Services. And from here, once you have your connections, you'll be able to do things like validate exec SQL statements in COBOL and PL1 programs, as well as run SQL statements, see the results, and tune SQL statements. I'm going to start showing uh, the features that we've integrated into the COBOL editor. So these are features for exec SQL statements in COBOL and PL1 programs. So we'll have the ability to run SQL statements and tune SQL statements from here. So first I'll show an example of running. And to do that, I need to first define a SQL connection. So I'm going to add a DB2 connection to this existing zOS connection. And when creating a connection to a DB2 system, you'll have a properties page with four pages in it. And from here, you can specify the location of the database as well as the port, as well as the host and the user and password. By default, it'll inherit these values from the parent connection, so you won't have to manage multiple passwords, but you can override these values if need be. So there I've just validated the connection properties are working. You also have the ability to add one or more JDBC properties to the connection that you're establishing, as we use the JDBC driver under the covers. You also have the ability to configure the trace levels of that DB2 driver if you need to see the low-level details, as well as configure the tuning server associated with this DB2 connection, which I'll demonstrate later. But here, let me complete creating this connection. So that connection has been created. You can see it now under the DB2 subsystem. And now that I've associated that connection with this file, we'll continue on with the next step of running the SQL statement. So here, this particular statement has an input variable where make equals question mark. So I'm going to provide the value that I want to use in that query. I'll say Audi. And it has now run that SQL statement and given me the two values that matched my parameter. Each of these statements that you run from a file are tracked in the query history folder for that individual file you are editing with. Additionally, we've previously had features such as error detection for variable errors, and quick fix suggestions, as well as with the SQL keywords as well. And we also have validation of table, schema, and column names. So if I were to make changes here, it would be able to detect that these particular tables or column names do not exist on the connection that we are currently using. We've configured this file to use. So if I were to say, associate this file with a different DB2 connection, one in which these tables don't exist, it will highlight that these tables could not be found. Let me switch that back. So like these features existed in IDZ 15.0 and earlier versions, and we've simply ported them to support this new connection framework. And we preserved the existing preference pages for validating exec SQL statements, as well, and the same behavior where it manages caches of the Db2 catalogs, and you can specify uh, whether to reuse the cached versions of these values or whether to fetch new catalog values for your edit session. No, so these are the features that were released in IDZ 16.0. I'm going to switch over to showing uh, some upcoming features where we've extended some of these SQL toolings from COBOL and PL1 files into editing just regular SQL files. So when you're working with full SQL files, you'll have a new option in the menu to run all the statements in the file, or you could run individual statements. Here I'm going to run all the statements in this file, which is going to drop some tables and recreate them and populate them with a little bit of data. And one of these statements, some of these returned failures. And that's because not on the connection I thought I was. So let me redo that. It failed to drop them because they didn't exist. But if I ran them on that database, they'll all work. So again, I'll see that added, another entry into the query history and all the individual statements there. I can view individual properties of the statements runs, and you'll see here different properties, like it says the statement updated one row. If I try and run just two of these statements, we'll see that these two statements failed to run. That's because I have a unique index on this table, so I can't insert these same values again. So if I explore the details of these statements, it'll show you the SQL error code and the SQL state code. These are hyperlinks so that you can, view the full documentation with those error statements. If you need additional understanding of why it failed. What else did I want to show? And we've incorporated a SQL parser into the systemz editor. So the systemz LPEX editor is what these are opening up with. And we've added, a parser to show things like syntax errors. What else can I show? I think that's about it. Okay. I'll go on to show another example. This example has three select statements in it. Let me associate a connection with it and run all the statements. It's not what I wanted to happen because, oh, okay. ADMF 01. Okay. Demo's a little backwards. What have I done? Okay. So first I wanted to, okay. So the purpose of this demo is to show some of these run SQL options. So with each file you're working with, there are 3 property tabs that you can configure for that file. One is which connection do you want to use for the various features, such as running or validation. There's a set of run SQL options and a set of tuning options, which I'll come back to later. For the run SQL options, you can define what you want to do in terms of, so some of the options are, if you're running multiple statements, do you want to commit them after each statement when all of them are finished running, or do you want to roll back the changes when it's done? So if you were, say, if you wanted to validate some insert statements without actually modifying the contents of your database, you could select to roll back the changes when it's done. And that way you can run insert statements, but they won't actually, the data that's inserted will be rolled back. You can also specify what to do when you hit an error. You can specify you want the processing to stop when you hit an error. And that's why only 2 statements are run in this case, because that's where I had it left. But if I set it back to processing continues and I run them all, I should get more errors. The reason this one's failing is because I'm trying to access a table from the sysIBM schema, but the default schema is inheriting ADMF01. You can also override what you want to use for the default schema for this particular file. And now if I were to run this statement again, get that statement would succeed. You can also just choose to run individual statements instead of all of them. And when you're running just one statement, the results show up automatically. So here's a select statement, and the results that it's returned. So since we're using the remote systems table, we get all of the nice features that this view already has, including you can export the contents of your query to a CSV file. You can, within the view, you could sort by individual columns if you like. You can add or remove columns from your view. You can choose to just view a subset of columns. You can also copy rows and paste them into a spreadsheet. The copy will copy them as tab separated values. Right. So, and all the values here are linked up to the properties table, and you can jump back and forth between the remote systems view. And from here, you can manage your history. You can delete certain values and stuff, or you could clear the full folder. All right. And the last thing I'm going to demonstrate is using the SQL Tuning Services. So here I have a SQL statement, and I want to explain it visually and see the execution plan that Db2 comes up with. So to do that, I need to associate a connection with this file. And from here, I can tune the SQL. Well, it's prompting me that I haven't fully configured the tuning section of my property, of my connection property. So I don't actually have any tuning services set up yet. So let me go and create that now. So I have a tuning services server running on port 994 using the same user and password as my Db2 system. And it's connecting to the system, and something funky has happened. I used the wrong port. Yeah, I used the wrong port. And it should try and reconnect automatically for me. Okay, I need to accept the self-signed certificate on that server. And once that connection's done, I can see the list of database connection profiles. A database connection profile provides the DB2 credentials that the tuning server will use to connect and introspect on a particular DB2 server. I'm going to create a new profile for my demo. And what this dialog will do is it's going to take the credentials I've already registered for this connection, my user and password, and upload them to the tuning server so that it can connect to DB2 on my behalf. And when that's done, it will also create the explain tables automatically for me. Now I can proceed with the next step, which is to run a visual explain job on that tuning server. The jobs are created under tuning history, and it's polled every second or so until it's done. And we see that now the visual explain job is done. I can open up that job, and it will open up in a browser a diagram of the query plan for that query that I've submitted. So from here, I can examine additional properties and such to understand what the performance of my query is and get insight into how I can improve that. So, you know, there under the DB2 system, there's so you can see here my DB2 connection and my tuning server profile connection. You can also view the profiles that exist on this connection, and you can also, from here, you can also drop or recreate or standardize the explain tables. Standardize will upgrade them to the latest schemas. You can also re-upload credentials if they've changed or delete them, as well as share permissions if you wanted to share a profile with multiple people. Why is it my context menu? You could also share revoke privileges. So that's the full demonstration of the features for DB2. Again, the visual explain and the run SQL stuff are available in version 16.0 for COBOL and PL1 programs, but for full SQL files, that'll be in an upcoming release. Another thing I'll highlight before I sign off is some built-in tutorials we have under the cheat sheets for getting started with IBM Developer Z. There's just a list of sort of tutorials that will guide you through the process of basically onboarding and running an example statement and tuning an example statement. Okay, I'll end the demo there. Thank you very much, and we'll get your questions in the next part of the demonstration.